Early photos reveal the enthusiasm of two young boys, something that would later become the trademark of their play. Once Andrew and Matthew Johns went from the backyard to the big time in the mid-1990s, they simply toyed around again. Always destined to represent, the Super League war shot both interstate and Australian teams ahead of schedule, but instead of succumbing to the pressures that come with it, they revelled in it, and the fun just continued.
And they never had a ball out of their hands. If we were in the hotel, they were up and down the hallway. If they were having breakfast, they still had a ball and doing what they were doing. And they'd whistle to each other and call to each other. We didn't know what they were doing, but they were just two immense talents having the time of their life.
In terms of football, that came in 1997, with that moment the whole club had been waiting for, the first ever premiership.
You just sort of forget, how enjoyable it is and how lucky we are that, we are brothers and how close we are and we got to play together, and it's something we love.
A reluctant leader, Andrew assumed the captaincy in 2001 with Matthew no longer by his side, but Joey played like he was born for it, finding new ways to terrorise teams as skipper of club, state and country.
He doesn't say a lot sometimes, but he certainly does a lot on the football field, and I think the players respond to him really well and they work with him and they follow him in the trenches.
Tomorrow night, the game's most remembered for John's magic.
That first half was just the most amazing bit of football.
The decision to use Newcastle Station to announce the Millennium Train review gave State Rail employees an unexpected opportunity to grab their minister's ear on the issue causing them greatest concern. Ironically, it came just minutes before Michael Costa was to brief Newcastle's business community on the review into the future of the Newcastle line. While business believes the railway has reached its use-by date, the Minister for the Hunter and Transport Services revealed workers are yet to be convinced scrapping the line is a good idea.
When you raise the issue of change, particularly where it affects jobs, you need to consult. And certainly I've undertaken that we will have consultation with all of the workers that are involved. But I also said from the day one, this is not about anybody losing a job.
With 2 months now under his belt as the minister responsible for the region, Michael Costa also used his business address to tackle perceptions about unemployment in the region.
Unemployment's still an issue, but it's not the problem it was 10 years ago. We need to focus in and develop strategies to reduce it below the state average.
And with the state budget now just a week away, Michael Costa wouldn't give any hints as to what the Hunter can expect from the Carr government, although he did admit the days of asking for state government handouts are over. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Remember this effort? Like the Storm, every NRL side has their own Andrew Johns story. A time where he doesn't just guide his team to victory, but practically beats them on his own. The Raiders suffered it in 2001 when Joey scored a club record 34 points. Knights coach Michael Hagan, who also played with Andrew, can't go past the match from the same season, where, after missing 10 weeks with a knee injury, Johns came back to blow Brisbane away in an incredible performance. Scoring 2 tries himself and with a hand or boot in several others, it was a devastating display.
I couldn't believe that someone could come back from that injury and not just ease their way in, but just from the off really dominate the game, and it was outstanding that night.
Paul Harrigan watched Andrew set up that try in 1997, which led to his most cherished career moment. But it's the 2001 grand final that left the Chief in awe when he thought he'd seen it all.
That first half was just the most amazing bit of football I've ever seen against a team that had broken all club records.
It led to Johns claiming the Clive Churchill Medal for Man of the Match. It sits proudly alongside an unprecedented 3 Dally M Awards and 2 Golden Boots, the honour bestowed on the world's best player. But there's more important things that Andrew holds close.
I think the thing that's going to stick out is all the friendships I've formed with players I play with now and have in the past, and those things will sort of last forever.
Tomorrow night, life in League's Fishbowl and just what's left to achieve.
Since being cleared of sex charges on Monday, Peter Blackmore has spoken out about his 15-month ordeal, critical of how police handled the case against him.
Being arrested at my home at 20 to 7 one morning, part of my bond conditions were that I was not allowed back within 500 metres of my own home.
Mr Blackmore was accused of sex offences against 3 women dating back to the 1970s, but a magistrate found there wasn't sufficient evidence to proceed to trial, the charges thrown out of court. Now the police investigation into the matter is under scrutiny.
We will conduct a comprehensive review of the reasons why these matters were dismissed.
During the course of the court case, Mr Blackmore's legal team accused the police investigators of incompetence and failing to show balance. The Assistant Commissioner says the review will determine whether or not there were in fact failings.
If in fact there are deficiencies in the investigation, then they will be dealt with.
The review is already underway, with the Assistant Commissioner pushing for it to be completed as soon as possible. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
You could say Sam Engelbrecht is as tough as his toys. On Monday afternoon, the toddler from Muswellbrook decided to wander away from his father, Hunter Valley horse trainer Peter Engelbrecht, and head for the family pool.
He was over in the feed shed over there, emptied 1 bag of feed, and Sam was gone. And he went to look for him straight away, and he found him, floating in the pool.
The difference between life and death for the 2.5-year-old was Dad's decision to do CPR.
He doesn't know CPR. He did the best he could, which was an excellent job, as you can see. Sam's fine, no complications or anything. So, yeah, amazing. His father's amazing.
Doctors were planning to transfer Sam to Newcastle for specialist treatment when his remarkable recovery began. His stay in the local hospital over by the following day. As a result of the Engelbrecht family's experience, police are now encouraging parents with children to use it as motivation to undertake a CPR course.
Oh, absolutely. It shows that whether you know CPR or not, as long as you have a go, the positive results of someone surviving something like this is just astronomical.
And there's this advice from Sam's mum.
Sam can actually swim, so my advice to parents, even if you think your child is safe, they're really not, because of in winter the cold water is what got Sam.
While the pool is now out of bounds, Sam's parents will continue to foster his already obvious hereditary skills for working with horses. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The stand-in captain trained strongly today, and Steve Simpson is confident about tomorrow night's game in the cold Penrith air.
Yeah, it's different, I suppose, but it's a challenge I'm sort of looking forward to, and I think it's going to be a great night for us tomorrow night.
I think it's something that he mightn't have expected early in the week, but I think he'll handle it pretty good. He's a pretty good leader for us, and he's been here a long while now, so I think he'll lead from the front pretty well.
The boys left for Sydney this afternoon ahead of tomorrow night's game. Blake Mueller will replace Matt Jobson, who's out with a shoulder injury, while Tim Maddison will start. Coach Hagan says with some key seniors out, the young guns are coming of age.
You know, Kurt Gidley, Sean Rudder, Luke Quigley have spent a bit of time together now trying to get our team organised. So today we had a pretty good session, and I think they'll get better the more time they spend there.
Yeah, we're pretty confident. Like Penrith are going well, but there's a few little areas we think we can get them, I think, tomorrow night. So we're just going to go down there and really tear in and rip in and play for the full 80 minutes and see what happens.
And there's still time to work on these goal kicks before tomorrow night.
Armed with placards and charged with emotion, residents and their carers marched to last night's meeting to find out their fate. Many of them have been cared for by Everton Residential Services for decades. Now it's pulling the pin and families are worried. Citing financial constraints, Everton will cease operating 9 group homes across Newcastle, which care for 26 intellectually disabled people. Michael Rawlings has been an Everton client for 25 years, and he wants to stay.
All my mates stay with me too.
Staff too are concerned not just for their jobs, but for the future of the residents.
We're the people that they spend Christmas and Easter and every birthday with. So we are, in effect, their family. You know, and Everton over the last 28 years has become a family, a very strong family.
Through all the emotion, there has been a positive outcome from last night's meeting. The state government department, which funds Everton, has reassured residents they won't be split up.
They're going from the certainty that they've had of a provider to not knowing who's going to care for them next. And our obligation in the department is to make sure that there is a good provider who provides quality services.
A new operator will be found through an open tender process. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
All the talk of what's happening in harness racing circles of late has overshadowed the lead-up to the Newcastle Guineas, which features tomorrow night. The $15,000 event for 3-year-olds showcases some of the sport's rising stars of the track, with 3 local runners involved tomorrow night, but the favourite is South Coast pacer Black Line. For the hunter, Super Squash is the region's biggest championship for the sport, and after 17 weeks of competition, Dora Creek has proved too good for Newcastle's international team, winning 11-7 overall. It was tough going early. In the number 1 men's final, International got the jump on the eventual winners, with Daniel Kowalski beating Kurt Sagala in a 5-setter. International did take out the women's final. A big game tomorrow at Cessnock, where the Goannas host Wyong and Newcastle Rugby League. The other match of the round is on Sunday at Harker, where old rivals Wests and Lakes United meet. In Newcastle Premier Rugby, would-be premiers the Waratahs play defending premiers Hamilton in what shapes to be the one to watch. And in NBN Soccer, Edgeworth square off against Western on Sunday in what will be a close one. Broadmeadow, meanwhile, faced Premiers Highfields after losing its first game of the season midweek in a catch-up game.
The Parliamentary Secretary for Defence bore the brunt of community outrage. The hands-off Gangan group has been fighting to have the 97-hectare site preserved, but in a flying visit to Williamtown today, Fran Bailey confirmed a sale went through a week ago. She laid blame with the state government, saying it could have bought the land but failed to meet the tender deadline.
And the state could have added the Gangan property to the national park if they wished. They have chosen not to do that.
But her own federal colleague and local MP Bob Baldwin says Defence too is at fault.
The state government hasn't moved, but Defence Department has just carried on regardless of requests in selling off this land. So to say I'm disgusted and disappointed is an understatement.
The Gangan group is now considering referring the issue to the Ombudsman.
It's come as an enormous shock to everyone that it's been sold, and we are faintly suspicious.
The purchase price and new owner remain confidential, as do their future plans for the site. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. Rescue crews began a frantic search after receiving reports of a man in trouble at the bogey hole south of Newcastle Beach. The man, aged in his 40s, had reportedly walked to the bottom step to wash his face when he was swamped by a wave and taken out to sea. He was with two friends who tried in vain to rescue him. Emergency workers also tried to reach the man, searching from the air and water, but the rescue was called off late this afternoon in fading light.
Under the watchful eye of coach Troy Fletcher and injured front rower Dave Goodridge, Wests had Lakes down 10-0 after just 10 minutes. It didn't take the Seagulls long to strike back though, Hugh Ryan crossing for his side's first of the day. Minutes later, Andrew Ryan struck again for the visitors, bringing the margin to 2 points before a lenient 10-metre rule and spirited defence saw Wests become restless leading into the break. Back from the sheds and a win against the feed led to a Ben Donaldson try, but Darren Ford and Justin White replied to level the scores. A lucky try to Brett Cullen and strong running from Kurt Stallworthy to set up Wayne March was enough to start a late roll for Wests. The Rosellas on their way to a 34-16 full-time scoreline. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
The federal government has allocated an additional 234 places for medical students, but just 4 of those extra places will go to the University of Newcastle. Academics and students say that's simply not enough.
Of course more could have been given, and that's a bureaucratic decision, so I just wonder what the decision's been made on.
The university says it currently trains 76 medical students each year, but 22 more students are required to meet the region's needs. Ironically, the majority of the extra places were allocated to major cities, which aren't experiencing a doctor shortage. CEO of Hunter Health, Professor Catherine McGrath, says the federal government hasn't done its homework.
My concern is that we get doctors to work in regional and rural Australia, and that means we need to build up training programs in regional and rural Australia.
But the university says it's not prepared to simply let the matter rest. It will continue lobbying the federal health and education ministers for more places. Meanwhile, some students say the medical course also needs more funding.
If you're going to train more people to become the doctors of the future, you need to back them with the resources that are necessary.
Lyndall Derrig, NBN News.
Grand finalist Lambton made a great start at Adamstown Oval, Reen Ferguson firing a silver bullet that ricocheted off the post. Teammate Shane Roberts was proving too clever at the other end, forcing Merryweather's Harry Webber to use his head to find the equaliser. Webber soon had his second, and suddenly Lambton was in trouble. Ferguson, though, kept his cool and set up Ben Gawthrop. 2-2 at half-time, neither side found the net in the second, nor the opening act of extra time. The restart, though, saw Lambton captain Blair Newham finish a real team effort. The side now meets Central Coasters St Edwards in the next round. To golf, and Nick Flanagan and James Niddy's stars continue to rise, with the Newcastle players selected to represent Australia at the Asia Pacific Teams Championships in September. Both are currently overseas preparing for tournaments in America. And young Lake Macquarie sailors Nathan Outeridge and Aidan Menzies are preparing for a busy series of international regattas. The pair leave Saturday to begin their build-up to defend their World Youth title off Portugal before events in Austria and Spain. All this comes amid exams, while Nathan's also just been named the State Youth Sailor of the Year. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
To the Hunters' biggest club, the state government's poker machine tax grab is little more than an ambit claim. West General Manager Philip Gardner says it would have a disastrous impact.
It would mean substantial redundancies in relationship to staff, substantial relook at how we do our business overall. And we're one of the most profitable clubs in the state.
Missing from the budget was any word on the proposed multi-purpose shipping terminal, but Lord Mayor John Tate is remaining optimistic.
I'm very keen to see that whole project go ahead just as quickly as possible, and I understand that it is on track to do that.
Newcastle's public hospital upgrade program receives $16 million, down on a $30 million preliminary estimate that the Newcastle strategy may require in the next financial year.
But it's not unusual for a project this big for the allocation to change across the years, but we're confident that by the end of 2007 we will have achieved the Newcastle strategy.
Education's provided another budget concern for the region. Muswellbrook South Public School has again failed to attract funding for its special education unit, while TAFE teachers believe up to 70% of students will be affected by an increase in course fees. Other major projects to be funded include the Mineral Resources Department's move to Maitland and a new Hunter Children's Court for Broadmeadow. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The Brown Trophy action began last night with tournament organisers cleverly pitting New South Wales against Queensland. Just like the league game, the Blues opened the scoring, although you don't see a Canadian import playing Origin football. The goal was Andrew Truman's first of two, with Tim Morgan also bagging a double to help New South Wales open with a 5-1 win. Tonight the Blues are seeking their third victory and a berth in Saturday's semis. The State Schools Indoor Cricket Championship, meantime, wraps up tomorrow, with Year 9 and 10 students from the south coast to Coffs Harbour battling it out. Sydney teams, though, are traditionally the ones to beat. After the 300 sides that started the CHS Open basketball knockout, it's come down to the final 8 boys and girls schools at Broadmeadow. Newcastle defeated Kempsey's Melville High in the quarters and went on to earn a berth in tomorrow's decider. Hunter Sports wasn't so lucky in the girls' semis, losing to Terrigal. And it wasn't an ideal day for the Sporting High School, with Katara causing an upset in the Bill Turner Cup. Tom Tredenick stealing the win with a golden goal.
The Carrington community rallied today outside the local medical centre, but their protests may have come too late. The closed sign went up permanently yesterday, the 2 local doctors moving to other positions. For a community with a large number of pensioners and young families, it's a major blow.
Things can come up very quickly with young children, and again, you like to think there's somewhere local you can go. So, yes, we see that as a real problem.
The gathering heard from local Labor politicians who said they're doing all they can to help. There were more signatures gathered today, but there's no clear way forward in finding replacement GPs.
With an increasing population, it should be very easy to attract a doctor, but there simply are not enough doctors.
Carrington residents say they're victims of a wider problem, with Newcastle currently experiencing a shortage of around 30 GPs. A delegation will meet with Liberal Senator John Tierney on Monday in another bid to find a solution. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. When Edgeworth doctor Jerry Lister hung up his stethoscope late today, he headed to his new night job, the first GP rostered to work the after-hours shift at John Hunter Hospital.
Saying I feel like I'm opening the batting for the team tonight.
Dr Lister is one of about 200 who've signed on to the GP Access after-hours service.
As I say, after hours is always the bane of the doctor's existence, is likewise for patients. If you can't get a doctor after hours, it's extremely difficult. This will allow both those needs to be met.
An extension of the successful Maitland model, the Australian First Service aims to provide better after-hours care for patients while easing the load on GPs and hospitals. The GPs will operate out of hospital emergency departments here at John Hunter, at Maitland and Belmont. They'll also be situated at the Toronto Polyclinic and at the Newcastle Community Health Centre. The doctors are linked to a call centre staffed by experienced nurses. They're the first point of call for patients. More urgent cases are then referred on to the GPs on duty.
It's strictly designed for urgent overnight care, in other words, stuff that can't wait for the GP the next day.
The service operates from 6 to 11 weeknights with extended hours on weekends. It can be accessed on 1300 130 147. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
They don't come more casual than Daniel Abraham. He returned from some days R&R in the bush where he was more concerned with catching pigs than chasing contracts.
Yeah, I ducked away for a night, mate, but in the back of my mind the contract was sitting there.
A Valentine Jr., the 22-year-old has steadily become a key member of the Knights pack and hopes it stays that way.
Yeah, I've always sort of come up through the ranks thinking, sort of hearing about blokes going to 1,000 different clubs and this and that. I'd sort of always hope to see myself as a one-man, sort of one club sort of set up.
He's been outstanding in every game this year and was close to our best at the weekend, I thought.
Even with Matt Parsons still a few weeks off a return and Ben Kennedy suspended, the young pack has a strong look about it. Not so Mark Hughes. The centre will have scans on his troublesome knee and wrist tomorrow, but will again start off the bench on Sunday.
I think his confidence is down a little bit because the knee is still causing him some trouble. And I think the other thing that you can't understate is the fact that Anthony Quinn's been playing terrific for a number of weeks.
Training in bleak conditions late today. It's Sunday. The Knights hope they can rain on the Bulldogs' family day.
When Joy Cummings became a Newcastle Council alderman in 1968, she probably never imagined what her career would hold. She created history in 1974, becoming Australia's first female Lord Mayor. Over the next decade, Joy would experience highs including royal visits and the challenge of change for her City of Steel. Former Labor colleague John Manning is still proud of the way his friend handled her job.
When she was in the council and her famous smile came through and a soft manner, but she could be firm if necessary.
A stroke abruptly halted her career in 1984. Ill health struck again recently and she died in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital overnight, aged 79. Lord Mayor John Tate says Joy Cummings has and will remain an inspiration for Newcastle councillors.
Sometimes I look at the portrait of Joy because it faces me on the other wall in the chamber, and I just look at that and I think, Joy, what would you do in this situation?
Joy Cummings' lasting legacies to the city include civic projects like the Hunter Street Mall, the foreshore and the preservation of Civic Park, Blackbutt Reserve and Fort Scratchley. Her funeral will be held next Monday at Christchurch Cathedral. Gary Blair, NBN News.
There's plenty who try to emulate Andrew John's kicking game, but the Bulldogs' Brent Sherwin is testament that practice makes perfect. A point not lost on the Knights captain.
Yeah, I think I showed Brett a few things when we went away. I think you might have showed Brett a few things, but probably his kicking game's without peer in the competition at the moment.
In fact, the Dogs have scored more tries from kicks than any other team this season, so it's not the game to lose your regular custodian, with Robbie O'Davis considered only 50-50 to play. Mark Hughes is on standby, but he too has problems. Requiring an injection to help settle his knee yesterday, treatment for a wrist problem that he's carried for a month will have to wait until next week, when the Knights enjoy the bye. First things first though, and that's the Bulldogs.
I expect them to be probably a little bit more intense this week, so we're going to have to be on our game to challenge them for sure.
Especially up front, and without Matt Parsons and Ben Kennedy, the skipper expects the pack to be led by Josh Perry, and he's ready to follow orders.
I've got to try and get back in that State of Origin side too, so I don't want them to play better than me, and I want that blue jersey back. Along
with the likes of Adam Woolnough, Steve Simpson and Daniel Abraham, a lot rests on the young forwards this Sunday.
We've got to bye the following week, so it's pretty much means 4 points to us if we win this weekend, so it's a massive game for us.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Around 4 hours a day for the past 2 months, it's this backyard gym where you would have found the Crampton brothers, along with their father, trainer Mick. At 27, some say Jamie's shot at an Australian belt is long overdue, and he can hardly wait now it's here.
There's been a lot of frustration over the last few years, and hopefully this will let all the frustration out.
He takes on 2000 Olympian Solomon Egermine, an African boxer who's now based in Australia and the current national middleweight champion.
He's a very solid fighter. He's pretty flat-footed. Looks like he's strong on his feet and that, but he's he's fit.
At 19 wins from 20 pro bouts, Jamie hopes the hometown crowd will see him take the belt. So too, brother Ben, undefeated as a pro, he'll fight for the vacant state junior middleweight against Sydney's Gary Comer, and he can't wait to put on a show.
This is, more or less for the Cessnock people. They've been really good supporters of ours for many years, and we just like to give something back to them.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Unveiling its plans in Newcastle today, Sydney Gas hopes to be the first to harvest the region's underground methane resources.
We will definitely be drilling wells before Christmas. We've done a lot of work with government and some of the coal mining companies, working out precisely where we should be drilling.
The company believes the Upper Hunter is gas-rich in areas like Singleton, Muswellbrook, Denman and Merriwa, but the valuable fuel for heating and cooking is being wasted.
The coal mining companies themselves need to deal with large volumes of gas every day of the week. They need to dispose of it for safety reasons. We're in a position to capture that gas and commercialise the outcome.
Sydney Gas is trying to raise money for its Hunter explorations, and the Mineral Resources Minister says if successful, the results could be good for consumers, given that most of the gas we use locally is produced in Victoria and South Australia.
If you're feeding gas in from this end of the pipeline, there has to be a reduction in travel costs, so there is a very, very good argument for cheaper gas.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. After years of playing second fiddle to the koalas, Blackbutt's wombats are moving into the spotlight. Clyde here is chuffed with the news that he'll be moving into a new enclosure later this year. Around him, the humans have been so busy building a new boardwalk with disabled access, they haven't had time to scratch.
Well, currently we're standing on the new section of 120 metre section of boardwalk that's links basically from the car park to the old existing boardwalk, and part of that boardwalk includes the new home for Clyde and Bonnie, our new wombats, who's Clyde's currently in my arms at the moment.
The $175,000 project should see the boardwalk opened within weeks, and September will see the wombats move into their new home, dubbed the Blackbutt Hilton,
where there'll be tunnel system set behind glass so they can actually walk up, and if the wombats happen to be sound asleep, because as we know, generally wombats sleep during the day. We could see them in their tunnel system back down in their enclosure.
But until the big opening in October, duty calls. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The community's plight has recently seen Hunter Health, GP organisations and Port Stephens Council hold negotiations with an interested South Coast doctor. Council has agreed to help secure the GP by including a doctor's surgery in the Rural Transaction Centre being proposed for Karua.